Our Bible word is Psalm 60 verse 12. Through God we will do valiantly, for it is He who shall tread down our enemies. So this psalm is actually a psalm of communal lament, and it's also a prayer. So, because there's complaints to God, and there's also petitions for divine help, and it expresses a prayer of the people and their leader at a time of military defeat and humiliation. So there's this feeling that God has abandoned His people and has left them at the mercy of His enemies. So there's this, as we shall see, this is nostalgia for the past. So it's a communal lament. It's a psalm of lament. God, help us. We need your help. We've been defeated and humiliated. If you go to the superscript of the psalm, it actually says there to the chief musician, etc. And then when that's David, fought against Mesopotamia and Syria of Zobah, and Joab returned and killed 12,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt. This was a later edition made by scribes. And in terms of us to place the psalm, it's not very useful. There's a jumble up of historical detail here. It's the scribes who added the superscript later. They wanted to connect some scribes to the life of David. But yeah, it confuses more than what it helps. It connects with events in the life of David and his campaign against the Edomites in the south. And if you go read 2 Samuel 8 and 1 Chronicles 18 and also 1 Kings 11, it speaks of David's campaign against the Edomites, or also one of his generals, Abishai, who killed 18,000 Edomites. So this was a time when David and his generals, they actually conquered, they overcame the Edomites. But our psalm actually speaks of defeat and humiliation. So what's going on here? Like I said, we can't use a superscript to help us place or give the historical context of this psalm because of this confusion of historical detail. Because if you go read Samuel and Kings, etc., the details are different as to what happened. And scholars speculate this psalm was composed in the time of the exile or after the temple was destroyed, and especially David's victorious campaign against the Edomites was remembered, and there's also this lashing out at the Edomites at the time of the exile, because the Edomites helped the Babylonians to conquer Jerusalem. If you go read various texts, there was lots of animosity you find in Old Testament scripture against the Edomites. It's mentioned in Jeremiah, in Isaiah, in Ezekiel, in Obadiah, Psalm 137, and also Lamentations. Various texts, they speak of how the Edomites helped the Babylonians. The Edomites came and they took advantage of Jerusalem in its moment of weakness and it was destroyed. The Edomites prevented people from fleeing Jerusalem. So there was a sort of lashing out against the Edomites. So that's probably the historical context of this psalm. So it's a combination of remembering the former glory days of David and his conquests of surrounding peoples, or the subjugation of surrounding peoples, but also now what the Edomites did to the Israelite people when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians came and destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. So remember this. And Edom, that was a place situated to the south of Judah. There was the Edomite kingdom there, and it was these people who helped the Babylonians to destroy and take over Jerusalem. So if we go back to Psalm, it's a time of humiliation, a time of defeat. If we go to verse 1, it says, O God, you have cast us off, you have broken us down, you have been displeased. Oh, restore us again. So yeah, it's a feeling of abandonment. God's people have been abandoned and they are cast down. And the next verses it speaks of, it feels like an earthquake has taken over the country. Maybe there was really an earthquake, but this is probably more metaphor that this destruction has come upon the people of Israel like an earthquake. There are fissures in the ground. And also it says that they've been overcome with grief. They are disorientated. It's like they've drunk wine and they drunk like wine. Or because of drinking wine, they are staggering around. It's just shock and disbelief that they're experiencing. And there's speaking of this raising of this banner or flag to warn the people around Jerusalem, to tell them, come, go to fortified cities or come to Jerusalem for safety. It's a time of military attack and defeat, etc. And then it also says, this ends with a prayer, and that's our first section of the song. And in verse 5, that your beloved may be delivered, save with your right hand and hear me. So the first five verses is this lament. It is a complaint and prayer for help to God. We've been humiliated. Our defenses have been breached. We are staggering around like as if we're drunk. It's just, they cannot cope. It's a terrible situation. And then from verses 6 to 8, and that is, God will conquer the land. And now the psalm represents God as his warrior king. Like he did in the past, he will go out and conquer the lands. If you look at this map on screen, this is the area more or less that was conquered by the Israelites according to biblical tradition. This area is specifically the kingdom of David as it existed at his time. And you'll see the surrounding nations that he also subjugated, like the Moabites and Edom in the south. Of course, there's also Philistine to the west. And also the regions further to the east and the north. God says here, I've conquered these things in your past, and this will happen again. I'm the warrior king, God says here, either through a prophet or through a king or through a priest. This is who God is. And he will distribute it again like they did at the conquest at the time of Joshua. If you go read there in verse 6, God has spoken in his holiness, I will rejoice, I will divide Shechem, etc. And then he also speaks each area of land that he will conquer or bring back to the Israelite people, so to speak. And he also mentions typical things that was carried around by a warrior at this time. For example, he speaks of a helmet in verse 7, and verse 8, a washpot and a shoe, etc. He says he will conquer like this warrior, and it will become part of his domain again. And he mentions there Shechem, the valley of Sukkoth. That's to the east of the Jordan River. Gilead, that's the area east of the Jordan River. Manasseh, that's the area north of Judah, and Ephraim as well. Judah, of course, the southern kingdom, Moab, Edom, and Philistia. God says, I'll be the warrior king, I will come and I will conquer it again. And now from verses 9 to 10, there's this plea to God. This is hope for the conquest of Edom. Who will bring me to the strong city? Who will lead me to Edom? And of course, there's also this feeling that God has abandoned them. Where are you, God? Why are you not here to help us? Verse 10, is it not you, O God, who has cast us off? And you, O God, who did not go out with our armies? So again, this is about nostalgia for the past conquests. Now at the time they're in the situation of humiliation and defeat. So it's kind of saying, God, where are you? We don't see you. Like what happened in the past, when you help us to conquer the promised land and the surrounding peoples. He says, come God, help us again in doing this. Now the last two verses is this prayer for relief. Help us from this humiliating situation, our state of grief. Give us help from trouble, for the help of man is useless. So it makes a contrast here. Only God can help. People can't help us. Then we come to our Bible word. Through God, we will do valiantly. Again, God can help us. People can't help us. Through God, we will do valiantly. For it is He who shall tread down our enemies. God will defeat our enemies. Human beings can't help us in this. So in its historical context, this is a psalm of lament, a cry to God, Lord, help us. We are being defeated, we are staring around, we are shocked, we cannot help ourselves. This is nostalgia going back to the time of King David and also the time of Joshua when the kingdom was conquered. The kingdom of David also when he defeated the Moabites and the Edomites. And the oracle here says that God will do it again for them in a sense. And also lastly, God will help us in our time of difficulty, in this time of humiliation and defeat.